Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel for yet another video mostly about Vital, but not only about Vital, as we're going to be using pigments also for a bit. It is about Shepard Tones, which are kind of a special tool for making very effective risers and transitions. So let's get in and see what's what. So if you were wondering what is a Shepard tone, I'm gonna get the basics covered here, but believe me, the topic is widely explained on YouTube if you have more curiosities. One that actually haunts me a little bit is, why is it called a Shepard tone? Because actually I have no clue about that, and I couldn't find out with that little bit of research I have made. So if you find why it's called a Shepard tone, let me know. So the idea is here setting it to be a Shepard tone and then getting a saw wave LFO to control it, make sure it goes from one extreme to the other. There's several ways to do that, but one is equivalent to the other. Let's get the smooth to 0 and let's get it a little slower. This will be clear in a bit. And now we have this thing, which seems to be a constantly rising pitch, but it isn't. This thing is cyclic, really. You obviously see there's an LFO moving, but it isn't too obvious. What is going on? Well, if you look here at this spectrum applied to the synth, you can see that there's like these peaks of the single harmonics moving up while then another peak appears, and there's actually quite a complicated way in which the volumes are changing with time. I tell you this because I kind of tried to make a Shepard tone, by hand, by getting summing oscillators. I tried it, and it is actually quite tricky. It's not like it cannot be done, but it isn't that immediate. So a Shepard tone is basically an acoustic illusion, something akin to, let's say, an Escher's ladder or a barber's pole, and it gives the listener the impression of something which is evolving constantly, while it is actually a cycle repeating itself more times than you can fathom. Sorry, I was talking about Shepard Tones, and I've just recently replayed the Mass Effect trilogy, and I just couldn't contain myself. Forgive me for the little humor. So, as I mentioned earlier, we can do these in Vital, but it's not the only modern instrument which allows to do them simply and in a native way. We can do them here in pigments. Just have already this saw wave LFO. I can use it to control the phi in this Shepard mode on this harmonic engine. It has several modes, partial modulation modes, and of course if we want to, kind of a convincing Shepard tone, we have it to occupy all the harmonics. Now the nice thing about it is that, you see, it will give you a very nice visual feedback of how this is working. But on the other hand, if you listen closely, something's quite different from how it was in Vital. I mean, of course, it is a different harmonic engine, it's a different sound engine going on a completely different route. I mean, what we're trying to achieve is the same result, but the maths are, very, very different. Oh, by the way, I put here a low-pass filter because this thing is annoyingly bright, and it would be horrible to just talk on top of it, and you can kind of understand what's going on here, even if it's just slightly filtered, don't you? So the idea here is the same, but something which is very different is what happens if I change the frequency of this LFO. Because you see here, the cycle, the fact that this is cyclical is not so obvious, but if I increase the frequency, there's several reasons why I barely ever use pigments. And one of these is that it's annoyingly buggy. Beyond being terribly hungry on the processor, it is terribly buggy. Why is it cutting off my voice while I'm doing this? I don't understand it. Anyway, I can change the rate of this LFO, make it quicker. And you see, now here already the periodicity is kind of obvious. But if we go further, we can push it into audio rate territory. And it will actually work. You see, it will. This is kind of cool, isn't it? While the same thing cannot be said with Vital, because you see here, if I try to do the same thing, having this LFO1, let's say we want it to be in seconds, we want it slow initially, it's very, very low, but if we move it quicker, now it's quite obviously periodic, but if we go a lot faster, this is probably due to the fact that this whole spectrum knob is definitely not intended to be modulated at audio rate. So I suppose this mess isn't what Metitel intended you to hear, but I suppose it wasn't intending us to audio rate modulate these things here. Even though we can make good use of it, you know, even just horrors have a place in modern day composition, don't they? So whether you like the idea of doing this the way Pigments does or the way Vital does, the point is there is some fun or somehow interest being to be found in this, because you need, you know, I mean, we've been talking about what a static somehow Shepard tone is. I mean, it's not static in the sense it does the sensation of being always in movement, but it's somehow static. And then we can wonder, what can we add to it? You know, can we add some movement to it? Well, for example, if we get this to be a lot slower, but we get on top of this something like an actual pitch modulation, things will get more interesting. Let's say, especially if we get a chance to be able, again, to change the speed of that. So let's say I get this to be 128 seconds against totally unsmooth, and I'll get it to control this, but well, 48, it's going to be a lot. Let's make it bipolar. Okay, so this is going to be on 128 seconds, but then I'm going to get, let's say, the mod wheel, just because it's simple, to control the speed of this LFO. And you see, this is actually controlling the pitch, so which might actually get us into audio rate territory properly, because, you know, we can do more or less FM on this. So you see, this is going to be very slow, and it starts from -24, which is a lot. It's so low. It's an insanely low note, but it will become something else. And besides having this, we also have this Shepard tone happening. We can make a little faster. And you see, this thing keeps changing, and you know, there is an actual pitch change, and we can make it a lot faster. It works. And you know, the two things can be combined, and we can also go and make things so that they go from being you can go from audio rate to something very slow, and it might have, you know, interesting effects. You know, emotionally you can build things upon it. To give a simple example of this, here we have this patch which I've made some time ago. It is actually pretty simple, but the point here that there are all these modulations going on. There's this automations going on, sorry, and there's, you know, a bunch of mapped macros, and so we have a transition from things being static to being dynamic and vice versa. Let's just listen to it and talk about it a little bit. So you see here, this is getting, it starts very low, and there's a change in pitch. Actually, I've made this thing. The trick here is actually, you see, this is like at -60, and here the whole synth is tuned at -48, but the point is that this starts at 48. So why was this? It was just to get the widest distance in pitch between my oscillator and the modulator, since I cannot get it below -60. Though I could actually do and add more modulators to make it go even lower. But the point here is that, you know, it is already way out of audio rate territory, and here you see the rate of this has gone into audio rate territory. It gets to a maximum here, and here it begins to also be a Shepard tone. But there is also the pitch movement going in the same direction, and it creates the whole thing. So the point here is that the whole thing as, you know, an emotional evolution, and things which are apparently a slow change become a periodic modulation to become a pitch, and then to go back. And well, I don't know what you think about it. I find it very fascinating and interesting, and I do it a lot in my music. I don't know, if you don't like it, just don't listen to my channel. So this was it. There could be a lot more to be said about Shepard Tones, their history, how they've been used in film music, and how they've taken a place more recently in a bunch of EDM tracks. I mean, you can hear a lot of techno with that in. There was tracks from like Infected Mushroom from like back in the late 90s, early 2000s that made use of them. There was like Hans Zimmer, which has filled up his soundtracks with those, and not only him. And they're interesting, they're effective, and you can use them in very effective ways in any kind of music you do. Well, unless you're doing, you know, just proper acoustic stuff with, you know, you just the guitar. Some people ask me to tell you how to make with a synth. No, in that case, you cannot use Shepard Tones, definitely. Now, if I seem a little dumber than my usual, it is because it's hot. Yes, I'm dropping a new video and it's hot. It's terribly hot. As you can see, I'm sweating like hell. There's cicadas outside screaming like crazy, and if I want to record something, I have to keep my windows closed and the aircon off, and this is the result. So be thankful for me to doing this, and don't worry about my daddy jokes getting anyone pregnant, since according to YouTube demographics, my channel has an exorbitantly male following, which, well, is kind of understandable. No women would be listening to a pedantic 40-year-old man talking about sins, wouldn't they? So this and humor aside, bye. I mean, there's not much more to say. You know, there's links in the description you should check out, and and if you haven't already, you definitely should subscribe, because you've been listening to me talking for quite some time, and you clearly like it. And also, if you find this interesting, take a look at my previous videos. Really, I've done a ton of stuff, and I think it might be interesting if you like this. Good. Well, this said again, bye.